At 75 years old, King Charles has made a shocking admission that leaves no room for doubt, confirming what many have long suspected for decades. Theories and whispers have swirled around the future king, focusing on his personal life and his approach to the monarchy. Now, with this bombshell revelation, it seems King Charles is finally ready to face the truth head-on. This raises questions about what his admission could mean for the royal family, his legacy, and the future of the British throne. Let's delve into the stunning details of what King Charles has just confessed. From the moment King Charles was born on November 14, 1948, his life was set on a unique path. As the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Charles was destined to one day become king. The weight of responsibility was placed on him from a young age. Even as a boy growing up in the shadow of a powerful monarch, his upbringing was unlike that of any other child in Britain, shaped by royal traditions, constant public attention, and a strict sense of duty to the crown. Now, at 75, King Charles has admitted something long suspected, and what he said might come as a shock. Before delving into this, it is important to understand a few key aspects of his life. Charles was never the typical future king that people expected. As a child, he was more reserved and introverted, showing a sensitive and thoughtful nature that contrasted with the strong, confident leaders the public was accustomed to. While his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, naturally embraced her royal duties, Charles seemed to struggle under the enormous expectations placed upon him. From his schooling at Gordonstoun, where he reportedly faced unhappiness, to his awkward public appearances as a young man, it became evident that the pressures of royal life weighed heavily on him. Throughout his youth and early adulthood, Charles found it challenging to live up to the image of a future monarch. His interests diverged from traditional royal duties, gravitating instead toward intellectual pursuits, art, and environmental issues. While these passions would later define his legacy, at the time, they didn't align with the public's expectations for a future king. The public wanted a strong, charismatic leader who could embody the modern monarchy, but instead, they saw a man who appeared uncertain, withdrawn, and occasionally out of touch with the everyday struggles of his future subjects. Charles's reserved demeanor was often perceived as aloofness, and he was criticized for being overly serious and lacking the charm his mother possessed. His public appearances were scrutinized by both the media and the public, fueling growing doubts about his suitability to take on the role of king when the time came. Even within royal circles, there were whispers questioning whether he was the right person to lead the monarchy into the future. His awkwardness during public ceremonies and tendency to avoid the limelight only added to these concerns. Compounding this pressure was the towering presence of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who was beloved by the public and known for her steady, hands-on approach to royal duties. In comparison, Charles appeared less decisive and less prepared for the crown, deepening doubts about his readiness to assume the role of king. The public often compared him to his mother, questioning whether he had the qualities needed to guide the monarchy through a rapidly changing world. As Charles matured, some of his personal decisions only reinforced these doubts. In 1981, the world watched with excitement as Prince Charles married Lady Diana Spencer in a grand royal wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral. The event was a global spectacle, and the young couple instantly became a sensation. Princess Diana, just 20 years old at the time, was adored by the public for her beauty, elegance, and modern princess image. On the surface, their marriage seemed like a fairy tale, but behind the royal facade, cracks in their relationship quickly began to emerge. From the beginning, there were signs of trouble. The 12-year age gap between Charles and Diana, coupled with their vastly different personalities, created tension. Charles, in his early 30s and accustomed to royal life, was focused on his duties and personal interests, while Diana struggled to adapt to the intense spotlight of royal life. Despite their differences, the public was captivated by the couple, and Diana quickly became known as the People's Princess. As their marriage progressed, it became evident that Charles and Diana were on very different paths. Diana's charm and compassion made her beloved by the public in a way that often overshadowed Charles. Her natural ability to connect with people, particularly through her charity work and public appearances, stood in contrast to Charles, who often came across as distant and reserved. The media amplified this perception, portraying Diana as a caring, relatable princess while casting Charles as an aloof, unemotional future king. Public scrutiny of their marriage intensified, and Charles's every move was closely watched. The media relentlessly compared the couple, with Diana's growing popularity only magnifying Charles's perceived shortcomings in the eyes of the public. This dynamic added immense pressure, and the scrutiny highlighted the stark differences between their approaches to public life. Charles's struggles during this period further fueled questions about his ability to lead the monarchy in a rapidly evolving world. As Diana's star rose, Charles seemed to fade into the background, and it wasn't long before rumors of trouble in their marriage began to circulate. The public's attention shifted to the cracks in their royal union. One of the most significant factors contributing to their marital breakdown was Charles's ongoing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. Even before marrying Diana, Charles had maintained a close bond with Camilla, a relationship that continued throughout his marriage. When details of his involvement with Camilla became public, the media frenzy surrounding Charles and Diana's relationship reached a fever pitch. The revelation of Charles's infidelity damaged his image and created a wave of sympathy for Diana, who was seen as the wronged wife. Diana's famous 1995 interview with BBC's Panorama deepened the divide. In the interview, she openly discussed her struggles within the royal family, her mental health, and the tensions in her marriage to Charles. Most notably, she made the now famous remark, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded," referring to Charles's ongoing relationship with Camilla. The public's sympathy for Diana surged, while Charles's reputation suffered significantly as he was seen as the man who had not only failed in his marriage but also betrayed the beloved princess. Diana's legacy only grew after their separation in 1992 and eventual divorce in 1996. She became a global icon, using her platform to advocate for causes such as landmine awareness and HIV/AIDS research. Her compassion and ability to connect with people on a personal level made her one of the most admired figures in the world. In contrast, Charles continued to struggle with his public image even after the divorce. Diana's shadow loomed large, making it difficult for him to escape the perception of being a cold, distant figure who had failed to appreciate the wife he once had. When Diana tragically died in a car accident in 1997, the world mourned her loss, and the royal family faced intense criticism for their handling of the situation. Charles, in particular, was seen as emotionally detached, further solidifying the public's view of him as unfit for the emotional demands of leadership. While he did his best to navigate the fallout from Diana's death, the overwhelming public affection for Diana and the media's focus on her legacy continued to define Charles for years. He became known as the man who had wronged the people's princess, a reputation that persisted well into his later life. In recent years, however, there are indications that Charles has begun to reflect more deeply on his past, including his relationship with Diana. At the age of 75, Charles appears to be reassessing the role Diana played not only in his life but also in shaping public perceptions of him and the monarchy as a whole. Diana's legacy remains strong, and as king, Charles seems to have gained a new understanding of the importance of connecting with the public in a personal and compassionate way, much like Diana did. There are signs that he may have reconsidered some of his past actions and decisions, particularly regarding his marriage and relationship with Camilla. While the damage caused by those years can never be undone, Charles's recent approach to his royal duties suggests he has learned lessons from his past. In a way, Diana's enduring legacy may have inspired Charles to adopt a more empathetic and hands-on approach to his role as king, possibly as an effort to win over a public that has long viewed him as distant and out of touch. The tumultuous marriage to Diana, its aftermath, and the public's enduring love for her have undeniably shaped Charles's public image. Now, in his later years, Charles seems to be acknowledging these past struggles and embracing his role with a sense of seriousness and reflection, perhaps influenced by the memory of Diana. This reflective approach is not the only defining aspect of Charles's journey. As the longest-serving heir apparent in British history, he spent over 70 years waiting for the throne. His entire adult life was spent in preparation for a role that seemed perpetually out of reach, creating a profound sense of frustration that followed him for decades. Charles's extended waiting period was unprecedented. No other British monarch has ever served as an heir for so long. This unique position contributed to the perception that Charles was a man in limbo, always on the verge of assuming his duties as king but never quite able to step into the role. The frustration he must have felt as the years passed by, unable to fulfill the destiny promised to him since birth, is easy to imagine. This frustration was not just private but public as well. As Charles aged, questions about whether he would ever become king and, more importantly, whether he was capable of handling the responsibility became increasingly frequent. Living under the shadow of Queen Elizabeth's long reign, his position as future monarch often felt like an indefinite burden rather than a defined role. The uncertainty surrounding his future amplified the public's doubts about his ability to lead. However, as he finally assumes the throne, Charles appears to be taking steps to reconcile his past and embrace his responsibilities, perhaps with a greater sense of empathy and self-awareness shaped by the trials and lessons of his long and complex journey. With his mother reigning well into her 90s, some began to wonder whether Charles would inherit the throne at all or if the crown would skip directly to his son, Prince William. These doubts, coupled with the public's preference for the younger, more charismatic members of the royal family, only deepened the uncertainty surrounding Charles's future role as king. However, Charles didn't spend these years of waiting idly. While the throne remained out of reach, he found other ways to leave his mark on the world. In the absence of royal duties, he focused his energy on causes close to his heart, most notably environmentalism, architecture, and charitable work. These efforts became a significant part of his public identity, offering a glimpse of the man behind the title of Prince of Wales. Charles has long been an advocate for environmental conservation, raising awareness decades before climate change became a mainstream issue. He consistently sounded the alarm about the dangers of deforestation, pollution, and unsustainable agriculture. His commitment to the environment, particularly in the early years, was often met with skepticism, as environmental issues were not yet a global priority. Despite this, Charles remained steadfast, using his platform to promote sustainable practices and conservation efforts long before they gained widespread recognition. Over time, his advocacy earned him praise for being ahead of his time, although it also attracted criticism from those who believed a future king should focus more on traditional royal duties. In addition to his environmental work, Charles developed a keen interest in architecture and urban planning. He became a vocal critic of modern architecture, famously expressing his disdain for certain contemporary designs that he felt were out of touch with the United Kingdom's historical and cultural heritage. His views on architecture were controversial, particularly when he publicly criticized the designs of high-profile buildings. Despite the backlash, Charles remained committed to preserving Britain's aesthetic character. He even founded the Prince's Foundation, which promotes traditional building methods and sustainable urban development. Beyond these specific causes, Charles also devoted himself to charitable work, notably through the Prince's Trust, an organization he founded in 1976. The Trust has supported disadvantaged youth, providing them with opportunities to develop skills and gain employment. Over the years, it has assisted hundreds of thousands of young people, earning Charles a reputation as a dedicated philanthropist. Despite these efforts, public opinion about Charles remained divided. While his environmentalism and charitable work garnered respect in certain circles, many viewed him as somewhat out of touch with the modern world. His outspoken views on topics like architecture and organic farming were often seen as eccentric, if not elitist. For years, the question lingered, was Charles truly fit to be king? This question of readiness followed Charles throughout his time as heir apparent. The public, accustomed to Queen Elizabeth's steady and traditional leadership, often doubted whether Charles was cut from the same cloth. His personal struggles, including the rocky years of his marriage to Diana, fueled doubts about his ability to take on the crown. Even his forward-thinking environmentalism, now widely embraced, was once considered unconventional, raising concerns about whether Charles could provide the stability the monarchy required. In recent months, however, as Charles steps into his role as king, there is a sense that he is reflecting on the years of waiting and the public doubts that have accompanied them. As a father, Charles's relationship with Prince William and Prince Harry has been marked by both pride and deep challenges. Following Princess Diana's tragic death, Charles faced the dual burden of grappling with his own grief while raising his two sons in the public eye. Diana's loss left an undeniable void in their family, and Charles was tasked with guiding William and Harry through their formative years under intense public scrutiny. His bond with William, often seen as the more dutiful and prepared for royal responsibilities, was at times strained but remained relatively stable. Charles provided William with a path ingrained in the traditions and expectations of the monarchy. In contrast, Charles's relationship with Harry has been far more turbulent, particularly in recent years. After Harry stepped back from royal duties and relocated to the United States, the family dynamic became visibly fractured. Harry's candid criticisms of the royal family, including remarks about his father's parenting and the institution's treatment of Meghan Markle, deepened the rift. This familial discord brought Charles under public pressure yet again, this time concerning his ability to maintain unity within his family. Despite these struggles, Charles continues to navigate the complexities of his role as both a father and a monarch, reflecting on his legacy while addressing the challenges of the present. The personal issues Charles has faced may have contributed to a shift in his mindset in recent months. There have been whispers suggesting that Charles has begun to recognize the weight of his responsibilities, not only as king but also as a father and public figure. His difficult experiences with his sons, though not openly acknowledged, have undeniably played a role in shaping who he is today. At 75, he appears to be re-evaluating both his personal and royal duties. However, there's another key element to consider: Camilla and her role as Queen Consort. The relationship between King Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles has long been one of the most talked about aspects of his personal life. What began as a scandal during his marriage to Princess Diana eventually led to their wedding in 2005, a controversial move for the future king. For years, Camilla was portrayed negatively in the media, often seen as the other woman who contributed to the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage. Public opinion was firmly against her, and many questioned whether the British people would ever accept her in a royal capacity. However, over time, the narrative around Camilla shifted. As the years passed, she took on a more active role in royal duties, working alongside Charles in various charitable endeavors and public appearances. Their commitment to these causes, as well as their steady public presence, gradually softened the public's perception of her. While she may never have enjoyed the widespread popularity that Diana had, Camilla's image has evolved from scandalous to accepted. When Charles ascended to the throne in 2022, Camilla became Queen Consort, a title that still carries some controversy but underscores her position alongside him as he leads the monarchy. Charles's early months as king were not without their challenges. The transition from Queen Elizabeth's long and stable reign to Charles's rule came with its own set of difficulties. There were questions about whether Charles, at 75, was truly up to the task of modernizing the monarchy. Lingering doubts about his past decisions and personal life, as well as concerns about his ability to maintain the same level of respect and unity that his mother had cultivated over decades, added to the uncertainty. During this period, Charles faced significant pressure to prove himself. He had to navigate not only the challenges of stepping into his new role but also the intense public scrutiny that had followed him for much of his life. In the early part of his reign, he addressed these doubts head-on, focusing on issues important to him and to the country. He continued championing environmental causes, as he had for decades, and worked to ensure that the monarchy adapted to changing times while still upholding tradition. Charles has gradually silenced some of the critics who doubted his ability to lead. His steady approach, combined with Camilla's growing acceptance, has helped stabilize his position as monarch. The initial shakiness of his reign seems to have given way to a more confident leadership style, one that reflects a man who has spent a lifetime preparing for this role. Though his reign began with uncertainties, Charles has already made several important changes that signal a new era for the monarchy. His leadership continues to evolve, and there are signs that he is ready to take on the full responsibility that comes with the role. At 75, King Charles has finally acknowledged what many had suspected. While he spent decades championing environmental causes and voicing strong opinions on issues close to his heart, his leadership style has become more measured, cautious, and focused on preserving the stability of the monarchy rather than pursuing dramatic reforms. This change in approach is clear evidence that Charles has embraced the weight of his role in a way the public had long questioned. One of the clearest signs of this shift is his increased engagement in both domestic and international affairs. Since ascending the throne, Charles has shown renewed commitment to his duties, taking on a more proactive role than many anticipated. He has become more visible at state functions, diplomatic meetings, and charity events, signaling his desire to lead with a steady hand. His schedule has grown busier with official engagements, and he appears more determined than ever to represent the monarchy on the world stage. This uptick in involvement reflects a king who, despite his age, is eager to prove that he is capable of steering the monarchy in the right direction. Charles's shift also extends to how he seems to acknowledge past criticisms. For years, he was seen as distant, especially after his affair with Camilla became public, and Diana's untimely death only strengthened the view that Charles had failed to live up to expectations, both as a husband and as a future king. Most importantly, the public saw him as having failed as a father to William and Harry. Charles has since reflected on Diana's legacy, once acknowledging that she was not only adored by millions but also a devoted mother. Her legacy, even decades after her death, continues to cast a long shadow over the monarchy. It is clear that Charles has had to come to terms with the public's enduring affection for her, and as king, he seems ready to reckon with that legacy, acknowledging both the admiration she commanded and the criticisms that arose from their tumultuous relationship. The distance that existed between Charles and his sons, particularly following Diana's death, has been another long-standing issue. His relationship with Prince Harry remains strained, with Harry openly criticizing both his father and the royal institution in recent years. Charles, however, appears to have adopted a more restrained approach, choosing not to engage publicly in the ongoing family drama, likely as part of his broader effort to maintain royal neutrality. This is a marked change from his earlier years when Charles was more vocal on divisive issues. His shift toward a more traditional, restrained royal stance has earned him some respect, as he now seems more focused on preserving the institution than on promoting his personal views. Finally, what do you think about King Charles? Let us know in the comments.